The American College of Paediatricians last week released their position statement opposing the use of gender-affirming medications such as puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones. This comes after a review of more than 60 studies concluded that there is no long-term evidence that mental health concerns are decreased or alleviated after gender-affirming therapy. Joining me now to discuss is evolutionary biologist and founding editor of The Real Last Stand, Colin Wright. Colin, tell me more about these findings and conclusions and what impact it will have.
Yeah, so these findings shouldn't come as a surprise to people who've been paying attention to this. In the US, people tend to be more surprised, and in Canada when they see these types of results, but the US and Canada are actually outliers in the world stage. So health authorities in like Sweden, Finland, and the UK, even the World Health Organization, they've all testified due to the lack of evidence of benefits for hormonally and surgically transitioning children. And the United States and Canada are kind of slowly coming forward and coming to terms with this. So the American College of Paediatricians, they basically did the same sort of just evidence survey as all these other European countries and organizations have done. And no surprise, they found the same conclusions that there's essentially no long-term evidence of the benefits for these sort of transitioning children, and mountains of risks and the potential hazards to look out for, such as, permanent body alterations and even permanent sterilization.
Colin, you think US and Canada are outliers. Australia is even further behind. The affirmation model is accepted here uncritically by so many in the medical profession, and they're not even having the review and discussion that we're seeing elsewhere. Meanwhile, we've got the American College of Paediatricians opposing surgery for youth. Tell me about this, because we keep hearing about 15-year-old, 16-year-old girls having double mastectomies, boys who go down the path of surgery and then have terrible regrets.
Well, frankly, it's just become such a political issue in the U.S., Canada, and Australia. Whereas these other countries, it's just they're not nearly as politically polarized, and so they're actually able to have sort of adult conversations about, the evidence for the benefits of these treatments, and even more just empirical conversations about, the fact that there's only two sexes, male and female. You can't actually change your sex. So this idea that you're changing your sex to match your gender identity, well, that's completely false if you can't actually change your sex. So these are purely cosmetic. This is all stuff that the American College of Paediatricians thankfully highlighted in this article, because other organizations like the American Academy of Pediatrics, they've just doubled down on their position to immediately transition kids, this whole gender-affirming care, despite the lack of evidence and all of the known risks.
Well, the American Psychiatric Association, they've released their gender-affirming psychiatric care textbook. And my gosh, some of the claims and conclusions in this are just, well, I guess it shouldn't be so astonishing when you look at around 90% of the authors identify as transgender, non-binary, or what they call gender expansive. They say that sex binary is not only harmful, but it's a mythical invention of European colonial influences. What's your response to that?
As a biologist, it's completely insane. Something else they defined sex. Well, they specifically said that sex was not something you can apply to bodies, but only individual traits. And so this is all part of their ideology, where if you can actually just modify traits, if you can give, boys breast implants and, remove a girl's breast or something, that you're actually changing their sex. So it really matters from a biological perspective, a reality-based perspective, if you can actually change sex, and you cannot.
Well, what's the reaction been to this gender-affirming psychiatric care textbook? Will it actually be a textbook that's going to be widely used, or is it something that the professionals look at and mock? What standing does it have?
Absolutely, it's going to be used. This is the document put out of the American Psychological Association or Psychiatric Association. So this is going to be a sort of a go-to textbook for anyone who's interested in delivering gender-affirming psychiatric care to their patients. And so we should be totally alarmed when we see books like this that are just riddled with complete activist jargon and are completely separated from reality. So bringing things back to reality is how we sort of end this entire thing. And this book is just an example of them going even further and further outside of the realm of reality, frankly.